Okay, so big thank you to everyone for sending in their questions and for subscribing. The 50,000 subscriber Q&A special is significantly behind schedule. Unfortunately, that seems to be my setting these days. This is actually the second time I've tried filming this. The first time I was a bit lethargic. That's unfortunately the result of not getting enough sleep, typically because my sleep schedule is something of a nightmare. 4 hours of sleep? Good enough to work a 12-hour shift at a job I hate! Now, I got a whole range of questions. A lot were similar, and I'll try to address them all as one big question. There are some other questions that I'm afraid I won't be able to answer, mostly for privacy reasons. So, let's go through the questions here. I'm going to be going in reverse order, and hopefully I can keep this video under an hour, assuming my phone doesn't go off. And yes, for those of you who know me, this is a real working smartphone that I use for work. Starting off with, do you believe in disaster goblin rights? No, goblins are not people and they should be exterminated like the pests that they are. I just want to know if you would ever review fan fiction. Typically not. I wouldn't want to go after Ash. Why must you make noise? Every time I get on camera, you must make noise. Why are you like this? Typically not. I try to go after things that actually have a budget or something behind it, with the exception of Onision, but hey, he was an easy target. I think fanfiction's a really good tool to help learn how to write, and I don't want to inadvertently discourage someone from improving their craft. Now, that being said, if there's a particularly famous fanfiction out there that's objectively bad, I might read it to have a bit of fun. We did that with Harry Potter and the Hogwarts School of Prayer and Miracles, which was just wonderfully terrible. Ash, seriously, stop it. I'm moving my lighting ring. No, do not give me that. And we are still trying to schedule the My Immortal reading for live stream. That unfortunately requires working with 3 other people scattered over 3 different timelines and 2 different countries. So, bit of a challenge in scheduling things. We are working on it though. Have you ever been in a teaching position before? Not officially. I have been an instructor for work, so I guess that counts. I don't think I'd really be any good at it in an official capacity because I have a tendency to be kind of really blunt and kind of a jackass. Like if I'm instructing a class, it's, oh, okay, we've got this new rule in place. It's kind of dumb, but we're gonna do it anyway. I'm kind of a dick. How to start on creative writing. Now, I got a lot of people asking for writing advice, or how to get over writer's block, or how to become a good writer. I'll let you know as soon as I become a better writer myself. I've only written a novella. I'm not really an expert. Everyone just seems to think I am. Actually, on that, I am slowly working on a separate video, as I've called it before, a side project of a side project. It's going to be like a top, I think I'm up to 7 tips for writers. It's just a list of basic ideas you may not have considered or might need to revisit in order to improve your writing. Basic tools, things like that. Why do you look like Jesus? I think the real question is, why does Jesus look like me? Come unto me, child, and be enamored by my glorious silken hair. Would you get into a boxing match with Onision? Well, I don't want to hurt the guy. I mean, I've got no professional training in like any real fighting style. I've never served or anything like that in the military, and Onision at least went through the Air Force. Not sure exactly what that entails. But yeah, I'd do a boxing match with him. It might be fun. Maybe a little bit cathartic. I mean, the man is built like an anorexic Ken doll, and I think it'd be really easy to get into his head. What are your 3 most hated writing conventions? Well, I'm not a fan of Balticon because they wouldn't let me take outside drinks inside the convention center. I'm obviously kidding. I'm actually thinking of going there next year. I don't know, I don't think I really have 3 hated writing conventions. When we're looking for just like basics, I'm kind of tired of the Chosen One prophecy story. That's usually just a weak excuse for a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu to come in and save the day. I'm not a fan of obligatory romance, just for the sake of having it. And I'll say Deus Ex Machinas, because I love it when characters have to use what limited resources they have to get out of a problem. Andy Weir's The Martian is a genius level example of that. Definitely go check out The Martian. What do you think of Game of Thrones Season 8? I actually don't watch the show. I'm pretty steadfast with the books. I've heard plenty of spoilers though in headlines thanks to asshole writers who don't know how to do their jobs properly, so thanks, dickweeds! I was planning on watching it at some point, but now I know everything that happens in Season 8 and I know I'd be wasting my time. That is just inconsiderate. As someone ready to binge watch your channel through exam season, any tips on where to start, best and worst series? All of my shows are awesome. I actually have several playlists that you can watch. Seasons 1 and 2 of The Book Was Better. From Crimson's Library is its own thing. Rogue Reviews are its own thing. Don't know how well that one aged, but oh well. I also have Uncovered Gems, which I really need to start finding more examples of that, like foreign films that I don't think enough American audiences really know about. Additionally, opinions on the Shadowhunter books if you have read them. I have read and I did a Book Was Better review on the City of Bones. I did not like it. Actually, fun note on that particular example is I did a podcast recently with another two writers, and we discussed The Mortal Instruments, the movie, how it compared to the book, what it got right, what it got wrong, and it should be out a little after I get this video out. I will link it on Twitter, so you can count on that. How have you overcome writer's block? I'm just answering this separately because I don't think I'm going to go into this on my writer's tips video, but my solution for writer's block is just jump to the next scene. You're going to have to edit your book anyway, so come back to it later. Hopefully the creative juices are flowing a little better and you can actually come up with something a little more coherent. What made you name your cat Ash? Mostly because I'm kind of a jackass in real life. So when I named Ash, I didn't name Leia. I adopted Leia from a friend, but I adopted Ash when he was only 8 weeks old, and I was fully in control of naming him whatever. So I decided to have a little bit of fun with it, because what's the point of naming an animal that does not respond to you when you call his name? Ash. He's right here at my feet. Not responding. Anyway, so when I went to name Ash, I decided to give him something that was going to be a combination of epic and something I could shorten, but mostly something completely ridiculous. And after I thought about it for about 3 minutes, I decided Ash Tongue the Deathsworn. That is his actual full name. We just call him Ash for short, obviously. And what are you doing? It's especially funny when I have to take him to the vet and I check him in and they ask, okay, what's this little fella's name? Ash Tongue the Deathsworn. You should see their faces. It is a lot of fun. My next cat's gonna be named Sammy the Solipsist. What is your type? I think I'm B positive, but I'm not sure actually. It's been a while since I've gotten my blood type tested. How old is Ash, and do you have any other cats? Newer fans might not know this if they haven't gone through The Book Was Better, but actually yes, Leia is around here somewhere. So this is Leia. I adopted her from a friend, and she is adorable and she has eye crud. Hold still. We're not sure exactly how old Leia is. She's about 9, but she was a rescue, and we're not sure how long she had been out on the streets. Ash, though, is going to be 3 later this year. Whoop. There you go. But both my cats are adorable, if a little rambunctious. A couple of questions here. What is the worst book you've ever read? Reaper's Creek, obviously. If you don't want to count anything by Onision, New Moon. Boring as hell. Although The Mister is definitely fighting for that title. What's the best book you've ever read? In terms of like influence on my life, I'd probably go with Jurassic Park. Because I read that when I was very young, just 7, because my parents would not let me see the movie after it came out, and it was a rebellious act that would totally allow me to see the violence of the movie in a way that my parents couldn't stop, because I was kind of dumb when I was a kid. And I just fell in love with reading from there, so. Who's your favorite author? Probably say Michael Crichton, because see previous answer. Would you ever consider doing a competition with your subscribers? Only if you're okay with not getting prizes, because I have no idea what I would do and I don't get that much money from YouTube. Was it worth the content to read/buy Onision's books? Or do you truly regret reading his abominations? Considering that by making fun of Onision's terrible books, I was able to triple my subscriber count, it was okay, it was worth it. Spend less than $30 and get 40,000 extra subscribers? Done deal. I mean, that's just pragmatism at that point. I have a very weird question. Have you seen any ContraPoints videos, and do you think you sound like her? I've seen one or two of ContraPoint's videos. Apparently, I dated a girl for a while who knew ContraPoints in real life, so that was cool. Still haven't gotten that shout out yet. But no, I don't think I really sound like ContraPoints, because ContraPoints does not have this deep, masculine tone like I do. Yes. I can't hear it, but I guess some people can. Have you ever experienced self-doubt about your writing abilities? If so, how did you overcome them? I have self-doubt about all the videos I put up. I'm sure there are going to be moments within this very Q&A that I'll have to pause about and say, should I really include this question? Should I really answer this question? I'm going through a few questions and thinking that right now, actually. For the first, I'll say, 4 years that I did YouTube, I was terrified every time I uploaded a video. It just came down to, is this funny enough? Is this correct? Did I make any mistakes? Are people gonna make fun of me for this? And you absolutely better believe I'm doing the same thing in the novel that I'm writing right now. Everyone seems to think that I have this god-tier writing ability. That's why they keep asking me questions about how to become a better writer. I've just published a novella. I'm hardly an expert. I mean, I think I've got a great idea. I've got this whole universe in my head that I want to get out on paper, but as far as getting everything down correctly and getting the characters across the way I want them to, expanding the universe in some sort of a reasonable order, all of this comes together, and I worry about how well I'm doing. I'm going through the second draft right now, and I'm just coming across all these problems that I made for myself in the first draft. I am not sure I will ever get to the point where I will be 100% satisfied with what I'm writing. Because I can get to a point where I'm like, this is awesome, I'll post it, I'll publish it, and 5 years later, I'll go back and I realize, oh my god, if I had done this like that, everything would be so much stronger. As far as overcoming it, I've got awesome fans who constantly encourage me. They say they like my content, they leave comments. It's awesome to hear from, actually, so I can use that as a self-confidence booster. So thanks to all you guys for that. For someone not in that position, I would say practice enough, get enough short stories or scenes out there that you can develop your skills properly. Fan fictions are a great way to do that. Look for constructive criticism, take it, try to improve from there, and get to the point where you actually start to feel really good about yourself. Sometimes you just need to listen to the people around you saying, no, this is genuinely good, I actually really like this, and believe them. Not everyone out there is going to be some sort of a massive liar just trying to make you feel better. If you had to save your cat or your books, which would you pick? The cats, obviously. The books, as much as I love them, can be replaced, and I do have a total list of all the titles I have. So, easy enough fix. When did you start writing, and what got you into wanting to write? Bit of a lengthy story here. This one actually goes back to college. My roommate at the time, a guy named Ryan, who does watch these videos, hi Ryan, started telling me about these things called fan fictions. I was not terribly familiar with fan fictions or fanfiction.net, where I ended up posting a few stories, but he showed me a few weird examples. I'll spare the details. Mostly things like Teen Titans. Some stories were pretty legitimately good, and I wondered if I would be able to do the same, because I was a big fan of Final Fantasy IX at the time, and the concept of a self-insert story kind of intrigued me. So I took the script for Final Fantasy IX, I went through the whole thing, added my own character in, twisted the story around in a few places, and just generally had fun with it. And after a while, it just expanded beyond the actual borders of the story, and I wondered if I could create a universe of my own. I wrote a little bit. Apparently I had a talent for it. I kept getting good comments and good reviews for it, so I just kept working at it, kept improving my craft, and pretty soon I wanted to try my own thing, not just fan fiction, my own actual story. So I ended up writing Microgod, and now I'm writing Luminarius, which I hope will be a successful 5-book series, possibly 6-book. I'll have to work on the story a little bit more, but yeah, there we are. If you got the chance to share one book with the Pope, which one would you want him to read? If I got to read and discuss things with him, probably something wildly inappropriate like the Anarchist Cookbook. Or I don't know, maybe one of Onision's books so the two of us could enjoy making fun of them together. Mostly because I really want to make the Pope say, damn bro, this is really fucked up. I've noticed that you have a storyline of sorts on here. The book was better reviews. If you wouldn't mind, what's the overarching storyline so far? Season 1, Crimson discovers that magic is real, and he's actually a mage, and he inadvertently creates an evil clone of himself who kidnaps him, throws him in a van, and plans to use him to become stronger. Has to do with the magic system I came up with. Season 2, Crimson discovers what type of a mage he is, but gets his, I'll say, magic artifact stolen from him, and we actually needed to finish Season 2. There was like one fight scene we needed to film, and we never got around to it for a multitude of reasons. Mostly it came down to scheduling, because it involved 3 of us from work, and our scheduling department is so many kinds of dumb. I'm honestly not sure if we're going to continue it. I would like to, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in it for the fans, so I'm probably going to hold off on it for now. Maybe write a book or a few books on it, because I did have 4 seasons planned and a possible movie. My brain never shuts off. My question is, what are your thoughts on early 2000s edgy teen book series like the Evermore series, Bitten series, and House of Night series? They seemed to be really pumped out regardless of the plot, because edgy teens were all obsessed with wolves and death. I'm not a fan of them. For obvious reasons. A lot of it is because it's very much not my demographic, but also because I think they're all the same. Frankly, it just became so tiring. I haven't read any of the examples listed. I have read Moon Called, though, which almost completely destroyed urban fantasy for me. I mean, if it weren't for Jim Butcher's Dresden Files, I would completely give up on anything with vampires or werewolves in it. Also, Kevin Heron's Iron Druid series. Those are also pretty good. Also, because a lot of the edginess that they go for in those books are very cringy. Like, if you wrote a journal while you were still in high school, go back and read it. You'll probably roll your eyes at some of the ridiculous bullshit you've written. Hell, go on Facebook and find a post from 5 years ago. That right there will do it. Do you have messed up dreams or nightmares from the torture you put yourself through reading such shitty books? I actually don't really remember my dreams or nightmares. I'm honestly not sure if I ever get to like that REM state of sleep where you can dream. I do all my dreaming in the daytime. My sleep schedule is not healthy, and I keep waking up in the middle of the night because I might have sleep apnea. Sleeping in for me means getting up at 5:30. What's one thing you'd like to tell your younger self? Winning lottery numbers. Probably something like I'd give myself a head start on my writing career, and maybe encourage myself to start YouTube or maybe tell myself to become a YouTuber earlier. Have you ever worked with an author as an editor or beta reader? If so, how was the experience? I do that actually as a Patreon reward for certain fans. By the way, if you want to donate to the Patreon, you'd be doing me a big favor. Help pay for the therapy I need after reading Onision's crap. It's generally pretty good. I've worked with a lot of people who have a lot of talent, and some of them I really cannot wait for them to actually finally publish their books, because I want to own a physical copy. Dylan, I am talking about you. There's also Timothy Howard. He has written the Oran Adventures series. They are a fun combination of magic and steampunk. Short stories and novellas, definitely check them out. Sam is also really good. I don't want to give full names here just in case they want to remain anonymous, but it's a very rewarding feeling to be able to help these authors and try to create stronger products, because if they're willing to listen to some sort of an internet jackass who thinks he knows what he's talking about, and they actually do churn out a better product, I don't take any credit for that. They're the ones actually putting the words on paper, but it does feel good knowing that I stepped in at some point to help them, at least in some minor way. What is your favorite book genre? I'll read just about anything, so this took me a bit to really narrow down, but if I had to pick anything, I would say probably a good thriller. Because if an author can get me on the edge of my seat worrying about some characters that I really like, thinking they might actually die, or get in some sort of a scenario where I'm right there alongside them, I have an absolutely thrilling time. That's why I like the Meg series so much. Yeah, they are stupid books, and they are the equivalent of a brain-dead summer blockbuster. But I hate the deep ocean, and jumping in there in submarines to go fight giant monster sharks. is fucking terrifying. So I love it. No, that doesn't make sense. Yes, I'm aware of it. No, I'm not going to explain it. Now that he's in the US, will you do a crossover with Dominic Noble / Lost in Adaptation? Dominic Noble, formerly known as The Dom, is another YouTuber who does very much what The Book Was Better does and compares movies to the books they're based on. I would love to do a crossover with him. My understanding is he's not a fan of crossovers, though. So at this point, my door's open. It's up to him, I guess. I have no idea what we'd review, but I would want to go after something particularly heinous, like Maximum Ride. That would be a lot of fun. Since you were considered a sword mage, and the fact that you have mentioned the Three Musketeers review that you have a knowledge of swords, started a college club, etc., have you ever considered the idea of making a separate series on this channel talking and analyzing swords? It could also be a tie-in to the Book is Better series to talk about famous swords and weapons in famous literature. That's an interesting idea. Unfortunately, I don't have the breadth of knowledge I think I would really need to make that kind of a channel interesting. I mean, the extent of my knowledge really comes down to where the pointy end of the sword is. I can give a very basic overview on how to fight with certain swords, but that's about it. Historically, it would require a lot more research than I feel to have the time for, especially with everything else I'm already doing on this channel, putting out weekly content. So I'm probably not going to do anything with swords. How would you feel about fans submitting their own books to you to at least read and maybe review? I actually love reading fans' books. I recently did The Last Dragon Princess by Cynthia Payne. That one was really good. I've got a couple of others. The Lux Chronicles by A.R. Lohr. New World by Greg Iles. No, I got that wrong. Hold on. I'm actually looking at a Greg Iles book. That's why I got the name wrong. Give me a second. Greg Haynes, I Am an Idiot. And I've got a couple of others that are coming my way. So if I can make a review of a small author or a not well-known author, give them a signal boost and get them a few more sales, that's awesome. Which of Riordan's Mythverse, as I call it, series was your favorite? And which book was the most interesting to read? Well, I've only read the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series and the Heroes of Olympus. So I still need to get to the others. I would say I'm more interested in the Heroes of Olympus because it brought up elements that were introduced in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, and it tied together all these different characters and gave them so much life that I was absolutely absorbed by the characters, not just overarching adventure, but also their individual stories. Frankly, I'm a little stumped and trying to find a favorite out of a lot of them. I would say my favorite would be the Son of Neptune from the Heroes of Olympus series, because by that point we weren't sure what was going on with Percy, and we got to see a completely different half of the universe, what would happen with the Roman gods' kids. And so that expansion was just a lot of fun to explore and examine, and we got to meet the other characters, Frank and I'm drawing a blank on her name, Hazel. That's right. Plus, it's got a really cool cover. That is really awesome. Which review would you say you had the most fun making? That would probably be 50 Shades of Grey. In terms of working with other people, 50 Shades was our biggest collaborative effort because I had myself, I had my production assistant Slade. She was with me for a lot of it. We brought in our friend Nick. He played the crazy homeless guy, and he absolutely killed it behind the scenes. Nick in real life is absolutely hilarious, and he makes everything funny. So working with him is working with someone who is just so naturally charismatic and funny was very enjoyable. Not to mention, we got to work in a lot of great jokes between myself and Slade. You didn't see everything, but at one point, we ended up cutting this in the final product, but we had a scene where Nick was kidnapping Slade on a bridge, and she was like, "Oh my God, what is going on?" It was kind of mirroring the whole helicopter flight from 50 Shades. Just effectively was what that was. But we actually had to film that in the rain because that was the one day that we could film. So I'm there walking backwards on a bridge with the two of them in front of me, camera in one hand, umbrella on the other, just so I don't get the camera wet. The whole thing was absurd. Just check out the bloopers to get an idea of what it was like behind the scenes, because we all had a great time. Why are you so hot? Because the AC was making a lot of noise in the vent over there, and I had to turn it off to film this. It's okay though, I got plenty of water, and it's Good and cold. Lots of ice. How did you come up with your username? There's no grand story behind it, frankly. I kind of wish there was. I was in a sword club when I was in college, and I thought, well, I don't think I'm really like any kind of an errant knight or anything like that. I'm much more of a puckish rogue. And I played around with that, and I figured, oh, maybe I can make a screen name off of that for like the YouTube or something, and kind of played around with it. What kind of a rogue do I want to be? Do I want to be a puckish rogue? Do I want to be a troublesome rogue? Just go with red rogue. No, that sounds too stupid. Crimson rogue. No, let's spell it with a K because that's cooler.
Because poor literacy is cool.
What's your opinion on the Kindle Unlimited service? I don't really use the service myself. I'm not a huge fan of digital books. I prefer physical books, in case you couldn't tell. But if it gets people reading, hey, that's awesome. What book/movie will you not bother with? I actually have a list that I was going to make for a Book Was Better special. I might still get around to that. I was hoping to make it a top 10 list, but I think I only got up to 7. Your thoughts on the upcoming TV show, Good Omens? Well, this video is going to be out after it premieres, so I hope this doesn't bite me in the ass, but I think it looks pretty good. It has David Tennant in it, and that's really all I needed to hear to enjoy it. If you found out you were a demigod, a la Percy Jackson, who would you want your godly parent to be? Not Poseidon, because I hate the deep ocean. Not Zeus, because I don't think I could stand having him as a father. There's way too many questions there. Hades doesn't seem like he'd be that bad, and frankly, controlling an army of skeletons would be so metal. I would say Mars, actually, because then at that point I would at least have some sort of a military prowess, a fighting ability, and I could go off and be a proper hero, I guess. Plus it seems like there'd be a lot of room to explore having Mars as a parent. It's kind of a broad power base, so could do something with it. What is your favorite place/moment/environment where to read? I've got 2. First one is with a lot of snow outside, kind of in the late evening with a fire going in the fireplace. Wood fire, of course. It's just so much better than gas. You get that good smoky smell going around. I just get nostalgic about that. And the second one is outside on a porch, preferably with a wraparound porch with a screen so I don't have to worry about bugs, during a rainstorm. Preferably somewhere kind of quiet because then you don't need to worry about cars and whatnot driving by. But both of those, I think, are very relaxing and perfect environments with minimal background noise to read in. Have you written your own book? If so, is it available for us to read? Check the description for MicroGod. And do you play D&D? Pathfinder, actually. And I have DM'd a couple of games. I have played several games. I typically play archers, rangers, fighters with an archery build, something like that. One of my favorite moments was when I played as an arcane archer at level 20. We just rolled level 20 characters for fun. And I shot a dude in the face with a spell, and a volcano erupted out of his face and killed like 100 people around him. We only played one night of that game. Have you read all the books on your bookshelves? And if so, how do you make the time to read? I pour every spare moment I can into reading or working on the show in some capacity. I have actually gotten to the point where I can walk and read at the same time. So if I'm at work, I'll just walk like between offices, reading a book at the same time. My coworkers make fun of me because they keep saying, "Hey, don't run into any walls!" And then I go out of my way to run into them. Such a stupid joke. I've heard it 100 times. It's not funny anymore. Also, I listen to audiobooks on my commute, so every spare moment I can. Has there ever been an instance where you thought the movie was better than the book? Actually, several. There have been plenty of times where I thought the movie did a better job telling the story or producing the characters, or it fixed problems that the book had. The Jack Reacher book, the main character was not an overpowered Gary Stu. Inkheart, the story centered more around the father character, as I felt it always should have, instead of the little girl who didn't do anything until like the last 50 pages of the book. Starship Troopers, the movie was just more campy fun. New Moon, it was shorter. So yeah, there's a list of movies better than the books. On a scale of 1 to 10, how emotionally scarred are you after reading Onision's books? I'm dead inside, so 2. If you were given the option to only read between Onision's books or Twilight, which would you pick? I would pick Cyanide-Flavored Bleach. What book surprised you the most when you read it? I'm not sure. I would say either Twilight, because a lot of people were praising it at the time when I picked it up, and I didn't know it was going to be that bad, so that was surprising. But there's also Lolita, and despite what it's about, that is one of the most beautifully written stories I've ever read. Like, story aside, if you get the chance to actually read it, definitely do. It is beautiful poetry. What is your best piece of advice for fiction writers? Accept constructive criticism. Not enough people do that. If you could take one movie or book that was bad and make it really good, what would you choose? I say this after thinking about it for only 30 seconds, but probably Percy Jackson, because there's an entire series they could have made from that if they just didn't screw up. But at the same time, I'm also curious in a rewrite of Green Lantern, because I thought there was a lot of potential for DC to get into the whole superhero cinematic universe that early if they just didn't screw everything up. Why do you enjoy self-harm through reading Onision's books? I'm secretly a masochist. Also for the lulz. What age do you live in? Because I just saw you take out a flip phone. What the fuck? Oh, are you jealous? Because I only have to charge my phone once a week? Also, my phone has moving parts. Can your smartphone do this? I didn't think so. Can we get more Ash screen time? Oh, I know you're grumpy. Okay, there we go. Here's a big orange boy. There's a ginger baby. And he's looking at me funny. What? Say hi to the internet, fuzzball. Say hi. Say hi. What are your favorite non-American books or movies? I haven't done any of these in a while, but I used to have a show, Uncovered Gems, where I would review non-American movies and try to get a little more attention for an American audience to go enjoy them. Of the lot of them, I'm kind of torn between Ip Man and My Way being some of my favorite foreign films. Ip Man is a brilliant martial arts movie with Donnie Yen playing Ip Man. He's the mentor who taught Bruce Lee. And My Way is this weird but still very enjoyable story about World War II. Two rivals, really, going through this bizarre journey through the Japanese Sino War and eventually ending up on the D-Day landing in Normandy. And of course The Secret of Kells, which came out of Ireland from Cartoon Saloon. Not a great name, but they are, in my opinion, the best animation team on the planet, second only to Studio Ghibli. What is your guilty pleasure in books? I kind of enjoy it when you have a bully character and they end up getting their just comeuppance in some way. As long as it's not like overly done and it's kind of like down to earth, it can be very satisfying. Can you tell us more about your upcoming book and when it will be done? I'd rather keep everything under wraps right now. I'll just say the title is Luminarius, but I'm planning on releasing some sort of a short, like 30-second trailer for it when it's finally published. If I can get around to it, of course. If you could have dinner with two people, alive or dead, one living, one past, who would they be? I would love to be able to sit down and talk with Michael Crichton. Actually, a lot of my disappointment for his death, aside from the obvious tragedy of it, was that he was never going to be around to read any of my own finished books. I don't know, it's a stupid fanboy moment. I kind of had this hope that eventually, when I was published, I'd be able to go up to him and say, you are a lot of the reason I started reading in the first place. So, as for the living, probably Neil Gaiman, because I think it'd be a lot of fun to pick his brain. The man is incredibly creative. I imagine we'd have a lot of fun discussions. Probably a repeated question, but how fast can you read? I'm actually not an especially fast reader. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. My thing is I just find multiple opportunities to actually go out and read. I try to finish about one book a week. Not always able to maintain that standard, but definitely at least one book every 2 weeks. As a writer, how do you view your previous work? Do you view it separate from yourself, or are you like me and cripplingly self-conscious about your work. I won't touch my earlier stuff. My oldest fan fiction is dead to me because I've gone so far from it that I no longer consider it like representative of what I can do. That being said, I do like to keep it around because it's a reminder of how far I've grown as a writer, but I do not like reading it. It's really bad. I see you have a flip phone. Why do you not upgrade to a smartphone? Well, I am somewhat reluctant to upgrade to a smartphone as a personal phone because if you have all the information that a smartphone can hold at your fingertips, you don't really need to retain that information, and so you typically don't. Or you second guess yourself and you just have to look it up so that you're absolutely sure of it. It's the open book fallacy. There's no need to remember things when it's all right here. 2 questions. How do you pick out what book to review, and do you take fan requests? I'm always up for a good fan request, and I kind of pick out reviews based on what time it is, or if there's some sort of an event tying up. Like if a movie is coming out and there's something similar that I can review, like when the live-action Jungle Book, or the first live-action Jungle Book came out, I reviewed the animated version to tie into that, playing with a YouTube algorithm. And I generally try to go for movies that are really bad, because if they're just boring, then I don't have much I can say, or if they're really good, then I've got to kind of control the fanboy in me. And I've also got to be careful because depending upon what I'm talking about, I risk annoying a particular fan base. So I've got to be really accurate in my research and interpretation. So, how are your arms so jacked? Dude, I almost never hit the gym. I have no idea what you're talking about. I am the stereotypical skinny white guy. Look at this. Who is the more disturbing horror author in your opinion, Stephen King or Jack Ketchum? I've only read The Dead Zone from Stephen King. I do need to get onto more of his things. I have not read Jack Ketchum, but quite frankly, neither of them hold a candle to Michael Grant. The stuff he does in Gone is absolutely horrifying, especially because you don't even know what's going on for the first several books. Who's your favorite superhero and why? Probably Venom, if you are willing to accept that as an answer, because I like a good anti-hero, and Venom is basically Spider-Man, just a little different. Cool powers, decent backstory. Keep in mind, of course, I am very much not a comics guy, so I do not have the breadth of knowledge required to properly answer that question. If you didn't want to accept that answer, I'd say Thor, based on how he is from the MCU. Lots of power and still kind of a fun guy to hang out with. Unless you're Noob Master 69. What is one book or movie that actually changed your view of life after viewing it? Well, there's Jurassic Park that really got me into heavy reading. The Golden Compass really opened my eyes to just how great fantasy could be. The Maze Runner, the movie, actually changed how I handled things in researching for the show. I used to read the books, then watch the movie, but The Maze Runner was so good as a movie, I decided to start watching the movies first in order to help eliminate some of the inherent bias that I had for the books. This one is not a book or a movie, but Final Fantasy IX I discovered in the formative teenage years, and it did a lot to influence who I wanted to be as a person, kind of tying in with the main character of that game, Zidane, or Zidane, however you pronounce it properly. Just being selfless and trying to help people, still trying to have fun, have this general optimistic view of life. Why don't you talk about Star Wars, and are you going to dig deeper into the 50 Shades series? We may review the other 50 Shades movies at one point. I'll just have to see if I can actually stomach them. Star Wars, I'm not a huge Star Wars guy. I like certain elements, and I've seen most of the movies, but they're not really... The movies came first, then you've got like the extended universe books and all that, so it's not really the kind of thing that I aim for. I'll probably do a rogue review of episode 9 when that finally comes out. I don't know how they're gonna handle that one. What's the worst thing that you have ever written? The script for my Starship Troopers review. What's your opinion on Australia? It's hot and dangerous and all the animals want to kill you. Apparently there are a lot of dingoes eating babies down there. If you were to guess, how many books would you own? And out of all of them, how many do you absolutely hate? I actually have a tablet that I use to record all new books that I bring into the house, And I actually went to a bookstore just yesterday, and I paid for all of the employees' salaries in one day. With all those new books added in, and everything else I have in the house, I have, as of this morning, 1,127. Keep in mind, that does not include the 500 or so books that my girlfriend has, so what's the best book that you've read as part of The Book Was Better that you would not have otherwise read? Probably Endless Love or The Time Traveler's Wife. I generally don't go for romance, it's not my genre, but those books were different. They weren't your traditional will they, won't they kind of romance. They actually had much more of a, well, in Endless Love's case, a deeper psychological danger twist to them. And The Time Traveler's Wife was this kind of intentionally messy timeline that really came down to how could this possibly work? Why do you hate Inkheart? Because it's boring. The main character doesn't do anything, the magic system is underutilized, and a whole lot of nothing happens. It's boring. Do you work out? Not nearly as much as I should. I'm actually doing a Tough Mudder later this very week, and it's probably going to destroy me. What is the most horrifying fanfic you've read? Out of mild curiosity, I attempted to find out what the big deal with Dipper Goes to Taco Bell was. It's earned its reputation. I did not finish that one. I don't think I ever will. It's too fucking gross. Are you planning on making a schedule for us to follow? Like, we can expect a The Book Was Better episode every second month, etc. I eventually do need to make a website or something where I can actually tell you guys more of what I'm doing or what's going on. In the meantime, though, you can follow me on Twitter. We've got a Discord. I also have a Facebook for the page. I don't update that as often as I should because, quite frankly, Facebook is unreliable. Like, it'll actually hide posts and it won't spread them as much as you think they do unless you pay an extra whatever. Frankly, it's not worth it. Hey Crimson, have you checked out the Redwall cookbook yet? Also, does NPC know about the Warcraft and Elder Scrolls cookbooks? I actually own the Warcraft cookbook and I love it. The woman who wrote it is an absolute nerd and it is brilliant because not only do you have these great recipes, every single one I've tried has been amazing by the way, but it gives you recommended pairings for different things inside the book. There's flavor text that really works along with the elements from Warcraft. Difficulty settings are based on the cooking skills from World of Warcraft. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely go and try some of it. And then try the tender shovel tusk steak because so delicious. I was not aware of the Redwall cookbook. My stepfather actually has the Elder Scrolls cookbook. He says that one's great, but I will look into the Redwall cookbook. Thank you. What do you look for most in a book? And if there is one aspect you look for more than others, then why that one? I look for good characters more than not. They don't need to be absolute gems or perfectly unique in every way, but if a character is interesting enough, then I can find myself getting completely lost in the story, and that just makes it all, that makes all the difference for me. Do you think getting a higher education is an important step towards bettering yourself as a writer? Do you ever get writing inspiration from your pets or people close to you? So I don't think the higher education is necessary if you're willing to get out there and get the experience like through writing fan fictions. It could help you on the technical side to understand different thematic differences or different techniques, things like that to follow. But those are things that if you know what to look for, you can learn on your own. And I do take inspiration from friends and people around me. Some of the side characters in my novel are actually named after friends and loosely based off of them. And one of the antagonists is based on some of them, some of my bosses from work. So that'll be fun when that goes public. What is your writing process? Step 1, daydream a lot. Step 2, sit at a computer. Step 3, imbibe an unhealthy amount of caffeine. Step 4, cry. Rinse and repeat. How come you don't advertise subscribing or liking very much? 'Cause I don't think my fans are idiots. Like, I hate it when someone gets in the face of the camera and just goes, "Hey yo, what up guys? Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and share for more content." Like, is someone gonna watch that and think, "Oh, wow, I forgot those were things"? What are your goals for making your movie reviews, book reviews, and the Book Was Better series? What inspires you to get up and make such detailed, thorough, and sometimes long videos? Well, when it comes to the book reviews and the book was better, it's largely to get people exposed to more books and interested in reading. The movie reviews, like the Rogue reviews, are really just easy videos for me to make content with, and gives me a reason to go out and watch movies in theaters, which is at least somewhat fun. The long book reviews that I've started doing, I think are going to be a great chance for me to not just go on lengthy, unscripted rants, but also point out some ways to improve writing that other people in the audience might be able to use. Do you ever think about narrating books professionally? The thoughts crossed my mind once or twice. I don't know if I'd be able to really do it because, I mean, even a normal book is like 12 to 15 hours of reading, and that's assuming you don't make any mistakes. If you ever watch me actually filming a review, you'll notice I do a lot of takes on certain lines. I do mess up. What would be your favorite murder mystery novel to recommend to someone? I haven't read too many murder mysteries, but I did rather enjoy Ruth Ware's The Woman from Cabin 10. It's basically a modernized version of Agatha Christie's The Orient Express. It's about a writer who gets onto a ship and one person just mysteriously vanishes and there's no record of it. We've got an entire ship full of suspects, so how do you seed through everything and find out who did it? Or if this person even existed in the first place. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Are you aware of how iconic your Onision reviews are? They're iconic? I mean, I'll take some credit. I think I am the only person on YouTube that I'm aware of, at least, to review all 3 books. I mean, I'm getting nowhere near the numbers like Strange Aeons gets, but I didn't think they were actually iconic, just fun. What's your Hogwarts house? Well, forgive me for taking the easy route, but I belong to Gryffindor! Wait a minute. Gryffindor! I don't know, growing up I always idolized the strong, stoic, heroic hero figures, and that's largely what Gryffindor seemed to idolize, so it just worked for me. Also, it's what the protagonists all belong to, so that's awesome. How did you get so good at analyzing texts and just stories in general? What ways can an aspiring author get constructive criticism? Just come up with a brand new screen name and go to sites like Wattpad or fanfiction and ask for criticism. Short of that, ask close friends and families that you can trust. As far as how did I get so good, the question is, am I good? The short version is a combination of education, and I've just been doing this for a long time. I've always been very analytical, and just applying it to books eventually became a fun hobby. Why and who do you think is a better horror author that also presents more interesting concepts for their writing, Stephen King or H.P. Lovecraft? I would say H.P. Lovecraft because although Stephen King is very good, and absolutely knows what he's doing. He's put out a crap ton of work. H.P. Lovecraft is much more iconic, and I think he's created a much more unique story base. Just the Cthulhu mythos in general has such this interesting old god universe built into it that I've just scratched the surface myself, and I already love the concepts behind it. What was the book that first got you into reading? Well, this one doesn't exactly count, but a lot of the reason I got into reading in the first place was because of my parents. Every night when I was growing up, we'd get story time before bedtime, and one of the earliest books they ever read me was The Big Red Barn. Now, this is not the actual book that I was read to from. This was a copy I got for nostalgia. The joke in my family used to be that this was the first book that I ever read because when I was 2, I was told I was more or less reading this book myself. Really, the book had been read to me so many times that I had it memorized, so I was able to go through and pretend read it myself. So this book has always been kind of special to me for that reason. Death Cure review, I'm hoping to get that out later this year, actually. My schedule's getting kind of cramped between work and now doing these long-form book reviews, as well as trying to desperately finish up my novel. But I do want to get that later in 2019. Ever considered a crossover with a nostalgia critic? If you had asked me that 2 years ago, I would have said hell yes. But then the Change the Channel controversy hit, and now I'm like, I'm good. I will do my show by myself, thank you. What got you into doing in-depth reviews and analyses of books and the like? Do you prefer reviewing bad books that you can break down, or is there more reward in talking about the ones you really enjoy? I really got into it back in college because I took several English classes and it came down to discussing what the books we read did right, what they did wrong. It was a lot of fun for me because I was able to really get in depth with not just the surface level stuff like what the characters did right, but also thematic connections between the characters and the events, and it was just a lot of fun. It was something that a couple of friends and I were able to sit down at lunch and talk about, and it just became an interesting hobby after a while. And also I prefer reviewing bad books because it's easier to make fun of them. While I can absolutely go fanboy over things that I enjoy, if there's not a lot there to really criticize, it's harder to write a script for. Especially if I want people to go out and read the books or watch the movie that I'm critiquing, because then I'm encouraged to not give as many details because I don't want to spoil the entire thing. Have you ever read The Eye of Argon? Yes, I have. We used to play that back in college. If you're not familiar with The Eye of Argon, it's this badly written story that I believe was submitted to the WorldCom Writing Challenge, and it was so bad that it won worst place. And then it continued to win worst place for like 15 years in a row, despite being submitted only once. I don't even remember that much of what it's about. It's like this warrior named Grignir who goes around and does stuff. Apparently the guy who wrote it was like 16 at the time, but if you go through it, you're like, dude, 16's old enough, you should have known better. Definitely check it out if you want a good laugh. Hey, loser. Hello, Sage. What do you think of redemption arcs and how modern day cartoons, stories, whatever, abuse said trope? I don't mind redemption arcs. They can be a lot of fun, especially if you want a really deep character. The problem with them, though, is that they're often used as a last-minute twist to try to get you conflicted about a villain or an anti-hero, and they're often not used well. If it's some sort of a last-minute change of heart, that's not really a redemption arc, but a lot of people seem to think that it is. It's like, well, you murdered millions of people, but you saved the hero at the last minute, so I guess you're okay now. We like you. Now, if we get some in-depth backstory about the villain, anti-hero, whatever, then it can be a little more salvageable. But you need to have that build-up. You need to have that backstory. Otherwise, it looks like some sort of a last-minute shoehorned attempt to make you feel sorry because, oh no, poor villain McBadface is going to melt in the lava. If it's not earned, it's lame. That's my thing. Will we ever get to see your cats take over your channel? If that happened, it would be a combination of Leia's favorite napping places and Ash tormenting Leia from those napping places. Or something like interesting ways to spread kitty litter throughout the house. How did it get in my sink, Ash? What is a good piece of advice about writing that someone else has told you? Never publish your first work. I wrote 4 novel-length fan fictions before I ever considered making my own story. And it was all for the better because I got all of the early mistakes out of the way. If you don't practice at first, it's like going into the Olympics without ever training for any event. You are going to look ridiculous. Do you know any language other than English, and have you read any books in other languages? Nope. I'm good at English, but I have completely exposed myself at sucking at foreign languages. I can barely pronounce basic French things. What will it take to get your channel the attention it deserves? An act of God. What is your favorite cat that appeared as a character in a film, book, or video game? Mr. Bigglesworth from Naxxramas in World of Warcraft. He absolutely had no reason being there. And every single time we went to raid that place, one of the party members would go up and end up killing him. It was always this big tragic moment. Ah, God, I miss Wrath of the Lich King. Which is better, Game of Thrones books or the TV show? Well, considering how everyone seems to hate Season 8, I'd say the books. Also, George R. R. Martin has spoken up and says that there will be unicorns later on. So, that's a plus. Who is the most overrated classic author and why is it James Joyce? Correct on that. Because James Joyce doesn't have anything to say and there's nothing interesting about his books. Anyone who doubts me otherwise, read the first page of Finnegan's Wake and tell me why it makes sense. I mean, yeah, Ulysses is touted as this great classic because each chapter has some sort of a different writing tick to it, and that's supposed to make it really special. You know what I call that? Being indecisive. What is your favorite genre of music? I like all sorts of things, but if I really want to have fun, I'm going to listen to something with drum and bass. It's like a less obnoxious version of dubstep, and I kind of enjoy it. It's like colorful noise. I would recommend you check out Pendulum and Cell Dweller for good examples there. Where is I am number 4? It's right here. I don't know why you're freaking out. What comic books and manga would you recommend? I'm not big on comics, but I would recommend a couple things actually come to mind. Full Metal Alchemist by Hiroma Arakawa is a lot of fun. Great magic system, great characters, great universe, great story. All just wraps together so damn well. But for my money, my favorite manga and anime consequently is Monster by Naoki Urasawa. Probably pronounced that wrong. It's about a Japanese doctor in the mid-90s who ends up saving a kid, and years later the kid comes back. Turns out he's actually a terrible serial killer. And it's so much deeper than you would think from that. The kid has this entire, like, deep state kind of backstory. All these interesting characters who interact and are somehow linked to the kid. You've got to uncover what happened to him, why he is the way he is. And the doctor has to do this while dodging the police as a fugitive because he's being blamed for several murders. It is this wonderfully tied together mystery. It is so good. I absolutely fell in love with the anime when I first saw it. Would you also consider reviewing The Fifth Wave? I might go after it at some point, but The Fifth Wave was incredibly boring, so I don't know. Kaitana Films did a review of The Fifth Wave, which I thought was pretty good, so you might want to check out his channel for that. The characters were boring, the story was boring, nothing fucking happened. It was just, if I review it, I'm gonna have to read the book again, and I don't want to do that. Least favorite movie or TV adaptation of a book you like. I'm actually gonna make a top 10 worst adaptations list later on, probably like in another 30 or so episodes. For a special reason, but we'll get to that one later. Are you a weeb? It was a phase in college, leave me alone! I was much more into anime when I was in college. Not as much anymore, largely because a lot of anime that have been coming out in the last decade I thought were very samey and didn't really do anything to stand out. There are some great anime out there, don't get me wrong. I just never really got into it again. Partially because I don't have the time to properly invest myself in certain series, especially with how some animes like to just drag themselves out. Dragon Ball Z! What POV do you like reading from the most? I'd say probably third person limited, because at that point you don't know exactly what's going to happen to the character, but you're still getting enough information about the character and what's going on that you can still get into their head somewhat. First person's not bad, and in some stories it works better, but I generally prefer not having all the baggage loaded down. What are your favorite albums of all time? I don't really go by albums themselves so much as songs, but Blind Guardians put out a few good ones. Breaking Benjamin's Phobia is always a favorite for mine. Pendulums in Silico is great driving music. Blind Guardians, Nightfall in Middle Earth, and Memories of a Time Yet to Come. Emigrate. Arcadia by Uriel is really soothing music. I love cooking to that. What do you think is the worst Harry Potter book, and what is your opinion on what people have dubbed J.K. Rowling's downfall? I wouldn't say there's a worst Harry Potter book, because they're all great. I would say the sixth one, Half-Blood Prince, is the least impressive because the whole book was pretty much just set up for the seventh book. And J.K. Rowling's downfall largely seems to be an attempt to stay in the public eye, even though, I mean, come on, you're like one of the most successful authors of all time. Roll with that! How much for an hour? I am a very expensive date, so a lot. I'm kidding, but I do wonder if you get any sort of enjoyment from reading an awful book. Is it pure torture, or is there any amount of glee when giving it a bad review? I enjoy being able to break something down and explain why it's bad. There's something fun about being able to properly tear something apart and try to use that to teach somebody else how to improve their own writing or explain ways that it could have been good. How well can you fight with your katana, and why do you have it? Well, it was a birthday present years ago, and I used to be able to fight decently. I actually took some lessons back in college with a style called Heiram Gumdo, which was a lot of fun, but I have not practiced in about a decade, so I'm sure I am terrible at it. What book protagonist would have made the Twilight series better? Spawn. How to get your hair like that? It's nice. Combination of good genetics and a particular shampoo brand who I will only list if I am given a sponsorship deal. How often do your cats interrupt you when doing videos? Not terribly frequently. Sometimes I just need to send them out of the room or give them food and they'll leave me alone. But at least a handful of times, 3 or 4, every Book Was Better review. What inspired the character of NPC? NPC was actually created on accident during my Troy review. See, I had this shirt that I picked up at a convention. It just said Essential NPC and it had some flavor text under that. I wrote a small scene in which Achilles was complaining about Agamemnon to a friend, and I just needed the friend to be wearing a different shirt and just to look different. And the NPC shirt was the one I just happened to grab. Well, after that I thought, hey, that's kind of funny. I might be able to make a character out of that. And so I just made NPC a different character. I put a gray sweatshirt on, standard jeans, a gray cap, trying to push the idea that he was a jack of all trades but didn't otherwise stand out. That's why he wears so much gray. And he does have more of an extensive background than that, but I'll save that for maybe if I write a book. Will there be more episodes of The Game Was Better? You can count on it. Are you more of a winter or a summer person? Definitely winter, because you can only take so many clothes off, but you can always add more layers. Also, winter is just peaceful for me. It's like 80 degrees outside right now. That's torture. You see how much hair I've got? It is hell for me out there. Alright guys, sorry for the sudden change in style. Unfortunately, when I was recording this the first time, my phone crapped out and told me that I had reached the end of the comments, and it turns out I was only a little more than halfway done, so we're gonna have to continue the rest of the questions this way. What's your favorite Pokemon? Charizard, I would say, because he's a fire-breathing dragon, and that's awesome. Also, because I have a holographic Charizard Pokemon card. Oh yes, I was the coolest kid when I was in middle school, or whenever that was. How are you dealing with DMCA and copyright strikes these days? Are you still getting demonetized all the time? And not only are copyright claims still a routine thing that I have to deal with, causing unnecessary delays in some of my work, but I am now getting manually selected for demonetization by YouTube drones for reasons they refuse to communicate with me. I'm coping well enough, thanks in large part to the generous patrons who support the channel, but it would be great if I understood what the hell YouTube even wanted from me. It would also be great if the same jackasses who keep putting false copyright claims on my videos would knock it off! Are there any books you will refuse to do a The Book Was Better for, and if so, what are your reasons for the refusal? Are there any books you want to do but are waiting for the right time to do them? If so, what are they? There are very few books I will refuse to do a Book Was Better for. I do have a small list of books I will likely never do a Book Was Better for. Things like general military movies like Lone Survivor or American Sniper. Because I prefer to tell jokes. I prefer to have more of a comedic spin on things, and I respect the military too much. I wouldn't feel right making jokes in situations like what those two stories are about. Also, Lolita was turned into a movie, and I refuse to touch that one for obvious reasons. There are plenty of books that I want to do reviews on. Nicholas Sparks' The Notebook, for one thing. I have something special planned for that one. And many, many others that are, frankly, too lengthy to really talk about. If you could resurrect just one author from the dead to continue the literary works, who would it be? Easy, Michael Crichton. Bit of a lengthy answer here, but what is your process when you're reading a book you intend to review or critique? Well, it depends on what kind of review we're talking about. If you mean The Book Was Better, I'll write a few notes down in a Word document as I'm reading along. Small notes on characters and general overarching plot lines, things like that. If we're talking a long-form review, I'll try to note anything noteworthy at all. Character moments, plot twists, strange moments, dumb lines. Really anything that I think I can bring up later on. Or something that's probably worthy of being looked up later on. Now that you read books to critique and analyze and review, how has it changed your experience and enjoyment of reading? I've definitely gotten a lot more analytical over the last couple of years. I used to just be able to breeze through a book and not even give it a second thought. I kind of have to turn my brain off if I want to just read a book for fun. If I'm analyzing things, I try not to go too overboard because I found that if I become too analytical, I wrap myself up in the minor details or trying to predict what's going to happen. And that can take the fun out of a few things like plot twists. Have you ever changed your mind of a book or adaptation of a book upon a rewatch? There are times when I've decided that I was either too harsh or too lenient upon something after a little bit of time has gone by. Maybe there was something I misinterpreted, or maybe there was something I didn't do enough research or I did bad research on. I do wish I had done a little more work for my Starship Troopers review, but hey, what can you do? There's always going to be something that I could do a little more work on, or I could word a little better. It's an unfortunate reality of constantly improving upon your craft. The Venom Rogue review, for example, I just went a little too fanboy and I wasn't really critical enough. There's a scene where Venom outright explains what his weaknesses are through Eddie to a woman that Venom knows is trying to get rid of him. I should have caught that, but I was too wrapped up in the moment because, as I've mentioned before, Venom was one of my favorite anti-heroes growing up. Are you ever going to do a review on Riordan's Heroes of Olympus series? I might. Something like that might make for a good challenge. I'm working on a Gone review first, so if that pans out pretty well, I could look into this. What book in your collection would you make sweet, sweet love to? Also, which one would you make love to again? Probably none of them, because that sounds like a very good way to get a very bad paper cut. What can NPC make? NPC specializes in cooking. His backstory, which we have not gone into extensive detail yet, does have him signing up for the Navy as a corpsman for a little while, so he does have some training as a medic. But as far as the other things he's tried to do, no, he's a complete screw-up. If Nicholas Sparks approached you and asked you, "Why don't you like my books?" would you be open to a civilized discussion with the man? No, I'd sucker punch him and run. I'm kidding, obviously. I would be open to a civil discussion. I'm not sure how productive it would be, though. He strikes me as a tad arrogant. Just a smidge. Especially because all of his books are exactly the same. He has told the same story, 17, 19 times now. Doesn't it bother you that your A Song of Ice and Fire books aren't all the same size? It did at first, and then I just got used to it, and now it doesn't bother me at all. I barely even notice it. Would you rather poop ice cream or sweat Mountain Dew? I have no idea why I'm even bothering with this one. Poop ice cream because I absolutely hate being sticky. More cat vids, please? Well, if that's what the people want, I guess I can make a few more. I've got this one that I've been holding on to for a little bit of Ash playing with an ice cube. I'll see if I can upload that. What's the best fanfiction you've ever read? Well, it wasn't a good fanfiction. I'm going to cheat on this one a little bit. But one of the most fun fanfictions I've ever had was something called Harry Potter and Hogwarts School of Prayer and Miracles. It was basically a terrible retelling of the Harry Potter series, but told as if Hogwarts was actually run by Southern Baptists. There are all sorts of absurdities in that book. The Slytherins are all representative of Catholics, and they all have red hair. Because every single Catholic must be Irish. One of the best moments is in the first chapter when Hagrid is going door to door proselytizing for this Hogwarts-based Southern Baptist religion, and Harry greets him at the door and has no idea what a Christian even is. Hagrid gives some very brief, not entirely wrong answer, and Harry is instantly converted on the spot. Well, his Aunt Petunia tries to convert him back to the ways of the Richard Dawkins and atheism, and Harry immediately turns around and starts quoting Bible scriptures at her. Like, dude, 5 minutes ago you didn't even know what a Christian was. How are you quoting the Bible at people? We did a reading of the entire story for a Patreon-only live stream, and it was some of the most fun we have ever had. I wish there was more to that fanfiction. Okay, a lot of questions here. Do you have a set writing schedule? Yes, 1 day a week I will sit down and I will do nothing but try to write all day, which means that I always start off with about 2 or 3 hours of getting distracted by YouTube videos and playing video games. How long have you been writing? Depending upon how generous you want to be with that, I've been writing for more than a decade. About 12 years to be exact. 12 or 13. I'm not exactly sure how long. How much time per day do you spend reading? Well, it depends if it's a work day or not, but at least 2 or 3 hours. Did you have to time travel to find that flip phone? Nope, got it off Amazon. What YouTubers do you watch? I prefer to watch video essayists generally. People like Mauler or The Act Man. Lindsay Ellis does good work. Philip DeFranco's good for news if I'm in that kind of a mood. History buffs, Phil Mento, Door Monster is great for little skits. Death Battle, of course. Sorrow TV, Saber Spark, Internet Comment Etiquette with Eric. Grimjack has some of my favorite abridged series. I enjoy a lot of the animated storytellers like Let Me Explain Studios, I'm going to get this wrong, Emirichu, Brewstew, Jaden Animations, of course. And while I'm hardly a brony, I absolutely love the drunken retellings that DWK does. His videos are the only reason I know anything about My Little Pony. And yes, I say that completely without shame. Favorite cereal. Did you know Chips Ahoy makes a cereal? How much do you hate Onision exactly? I won't say that I hate Onision, more like if he was stuck inside of a burning car, I would duct tape the doors shut just to be safe. What's your stance on novelizations of movies? Would you ever consider doing a review of a movie novelization? I don't mind them per se, but I won't really review them because the point of the book was better is to get people's attention towards the book and say, hey look, the book told the story so much better, you should check it out. I can't do that with a novelization. Are you familiar with Books versus Movies review series? Yes, I know of it. I don't really watch any episodes though. And what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Depends entirely if you're talking African or European. Is Warhammer 40k lore appealing to you at all? In a vague sense, yes. I like a lot of the ideas that are presented. I don't know if I'll ever actually get around to reading the books, because Slade, my production assistant, reads the Horus Heresy books religiously and will not shut up about them. And now I think I know almost as much as she does, so I don't see a point in really diving deeper. Still, a lot of the ideas are pretty cool. You get to live in one world from fiction of your choosing. Which one do you pick? I don't know, but probably something really hedonistic. What made you want to become a writer? Was it just something that happened, or was there a particular work that spoke to you? Really, I just seemed to have a talent for it. I started writing fan fictions for fun, and people seemed to like it, so I thought, okay, I'll give this a shot, and here we are now. What book series do you love, but don't think would make for a good movie or show, or at least would be very difficult to adapt? The Gone series. I have sung praises about those books ever since I read them. They are absolutely glorious. However, there are a number of limitations that would prevent any kind of adaptation. For starters, the oldest characters in the books, for the first several books, are only 15 years old. Many of them are much younger than that. So if you're trying live action, well, good luck finding the number of kids who can actually pull those roles off. Yeah, they got lucky with like the 5 kids from Stranger Things. Let's see them pull it off another 25 times. Oh, but yes, they could animate it and just use voice actors to present the kids. However, a lot of those books are about watching children get murdered. So again, good luck finding anyone willing to touch that. Which fictional universe would you most want to live in, assuming you'd be granted at least some of the abilities tech available in the setting? Which universe would you least want to live in, even if you have some of the abilities or tech from the setting? Well, I would say my own, but you guys don't know what that is yet, so I'll just go with Harry Potter. The magic is pretty well set, and it seems like it'd be a lot of fun to try to study. If that's too obvious an answer, I'll go with Earthman Jack. It's a series written by Matthew Kaddish, and one of the elements in that is you have this spaceship that's more or less an extension of quantum physics. Think if you had an entire spaceship that was basically the room of requirement from Harry Potter. That's an oversimplification, but it's kind of accurate. Also, good book series, and he's a fan of the show, so go check him out. If you had to switch consciousness with one of your cats, then let them run the show in your body, which would be the more qualified? Can I say neither? While Leia would be more likely to understand the subject material, I don't think she would work up the energy to bother hosting anything. It would just be like her taking a nap on camera. Ash would absolutely have the energy, but I don't think he has the knowledge or focus to actually go through with something like that. What is your least favorite video you've made? I don't think I have a video that I'm really ashamed of or I really hate, because if I really hate it, I'd just take it down. But I'm not crazy about my Starship Troopers review. any of them, honestly. I never got into the book, and I think that really held me back from doing additional research and just comparing the source material to the movies. So, additionally, for the people who asked, that's probably why I'm not going to be touching the 4th or 5th Starship Troopers movies, or the show Roughneck Troopers, but I will say that show was awesome. In recent times, there's been some debate about the necessity of internal consistency within storytelling. Some people believe that all plot holes are bad and worsen stories to varying degrees, while others believe that some consistency can be sacrificed for emotional payoffs or to move the plot forward. What are your thoughts on internal consistency and why? Trying to excuse plot holes like that is just pure laziness. If you need to cheat and betray some of your internal consistency to make your story work, you should rework your story. Now, there is something to think about in terms of internal consistency and perceived plot holes. A lot of people like to cite the eagles from The Lord of the Rings as a plot hole. Why didn't they just ride the eagles to Mordor and destroy the ring that way? And if you had actually read the books, you would know that that is answered. To sum up, I find internal consistency very important. There's also something to be said about the time turners from Harry Potter. Now, while I can totally believe that magic can somehow help time travel, and I can totally believe that the time turners were all destroyed, especially if that means that we don't get the cursed child, this is not really a plot hole. Some people have said, oh, it's a plot hole because why don't they just go back in time and save Harry's parents or stop Voldemort earlier? Well, for the longest time because they thought Voldemort was dead. And frankly, the amount of times they would need to turn the time turner in order to go back that far would be far too risky. And that's without mentioning the other things they could inadvertently change just by being there or accidentally bumping into somebody or killing the wrong person or the myriad of other things that could go wrong. Can I pet your cat? No, my kitty. What's your favorite book to film adaptation? Probably The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride movie is pretty much the golden standard when it comes to literary adaptations. It is almost a one-to-one verbatim retelling of the book. There are entire scenes that are recreated perfectly in the movie. Really, the only things the movie cut from the book were Inigo's backstory and Fezzik's backstory. And it changed up the framing device, and it also cut up the abridging jokes from the book. Who stole my virginity and how do I get it back? I don't know who stole it, but I think they make a cream for that. When will you review the Dresden Files? I'm slowly making my way through the books because I want to get a really solid idea of who Harry Dresden is, and I've been told that the TV series really screws up his character. And a number of other things, apparently. Aren't you the guy that ran over my dog last week? No, I'm the guy who kidnapped your uncle. By the way, you still haven't paid the ransom. If you got to choose one book or series to get a big budget movie adaptation, which one would it be? Well, assuming saying My Own isn't an option, I would say James Rawlins's Sigma Force series. Sigma Force is basically what you get when you combined Indiana Jones and Jason Bourne. I am surprised this has not been given a movie deal yet. The books are a little wordy, but at the core, they're pretty good, I think. Crimson, are you going to change your YouTube profile picture, or are you just going to leave it the way it is? I still have a flip phone. Do you think I'm not resistant to change? I don't know. I've gotten a little bit of fan art, so I might switch it around. I'll just have to find the right kind of thing that works. Do you feel confident in your status as the only human being alive with a flip phone? You'll all be sorry and begging for my help when your smartphones go down and no one can understand what's happening because Skynet's taking over. And I, as the only person alive with a flip phone still, will be the only person leading the human resistance. Yes, I will be the John Connor of the revolution. What kind of places do you buy your books? I prefer to shop in used bookstores. They're usually a lot cheaper and you can walk out with so many more titles. While their selection isn't always as good and the books aren't always in great shape, you can usually get them for a lot cheaper than in something like a Barnes & Noble. Most times when I go to my favorite used bookstore, I can walk out with 20 books and not even break $100. What is your ideal Dungeons & Dragons character? Also, if you were a dungeon master, what would be the perfect campaign? I generally prefer classes with archery builds, so rangers or fighters who just use bows, things like that. And I have DM'd a little bit. I found that a really compelling villain can keep your players going. What's your favorite magic system you've seen in books or movies? I would say alchemy from Full Metal Alchemist. The combination of magic and science just work together so seamlessly that they're one and the same. Also, by using alchemy, you have to draw a transmutation circle, and that allows for a lot of really creative runescaping. A lot of the more complicated circles just look so artistic. Plus, it's defined well enough that you can understand its limitations, but broadly enough that you can still do a whole range of things. It's just a lot of fun. What's the harshest piece of criticism you ever received, and how did it change you? Well, not counting trolling, for obvious reasons, when I was still writing my first novel-length fanfiction, I got a review that said that he really wasn't impressed with my work. Apparently my descriptions were kind of bland and didn't really paint a good picture and didn't really set the scene very well. Looking back, it was actually right. I was writing a self-insert story for Final Fantasy IX, and I relied more on the readers actually already having played the games to set the scenes and the characters rather than do it myself. And because of that, I took an effort to spend more time describing the scenes, describing the characters, making sure that everything panned out well. I really think I've made significant improvements ever since that chapter. If you're talking more about things for the YouTube channel, I've gotten criticism that I was trying to be too much like the nostalgia critic, and in my early days, yeah, that's true. Before I really found my own pace and my own style that I was truly comfortable with, I was kind of taking a little inspiration from the nostalgia critic. Just the energy and the histrionics and sometimes blowing things out of proportion for the sake of comedy. It really wasn't my thing. I mean, for a little while I thought it was, but I think I've gotten a lot more comfortable with how I do reviews now. Much more reserved, not really angry for the sake of anger. That's just really overdone these days. And frankly, I think I'm in a much better place now because of that general criticism. So yeah, constructive criticism can be very beneficial if you allow it to be. What would you want in a movie adaptation of Microgod? Well, assuming I'm not limited to a single thing here, accurate carrying over of the story and the dialogue, decent actors to play the parts, good set pieces, good special effects, a competent director. I would also like a role as a consultant and maybe a cameo. Lines would be nice, but they're not vital. If you could collaborate on a review with any famous YouTuber, who would you pick? Easily, I would go with PewDiePie, because quite frankly, the signal boost would be amazing. I have no idea what we would discuss or how we would discuss it, but if I could somehow get onto his channel, all of a sudden, millions of people would know that I exist. Which universe in the book was better series would make the best replacement for Hell? I would say the anachronistic, dystopian future Beowulf, because then not only would nothing make sense, but no one would be able to act. That or Divergent, where everything's dystopian and stupid. But that one's not as bad because at least we get to look at Theo James. What should you do if you find a cliche in your writing, and how should you fix it? The first step is don't freak out. There are still a lot of cliches that go about these days, and it's not always the end of a book. If you can work around it and get yourself out of the cliche, hey, that's awesome. But it's not a death knell. Otherwise, go back to the drawing board, work out your storyboard, see if you can get yourself out of it through alternate means. But don't freak out about it too much. Yeah, cliches suck, but they're not nearly as big a problem as something like a plot hole. Would you use a typewriter if someone sent it to you? A very generous offer. Unfortunately, I create too many typos to really rely upon a typewriter. Do you have a movie or book in a genre you usually don't partake in, but you love that story for some reason? There's a book in my library called Brothers in Arms. It's a German book written a little after World War II, and it's about a couple of men who served together in World War II trying to make life work for them. It's something of a historical drama piece, and I normally don't go for that, but frankly the characters were so compelling in this story that I couldn't help but love it. It was a little awkward at times, but frankly the pacing, the characters, the setting, everything was done so well and so entertainingly that I could not put that book down. What's your favorite alternate history series? I don't really go for alternate history, not that I try to avoid it by any means, of course, but The only one I can really answer that with is the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. It's an alternate retelling of the Napoleonic Wars, but with dragons. Slow pacing, but decent enough story. I might get around to finishing that up, I'm not sure. What is your favorite and least favorite genre of books? Favorite is thriller, like I said earlier. Least favorite is probably, if we're speaking broadly, romance, because I'm a heartless monster. What annoys you more? Good adaptations of shitty books or shitty adaptations of good books? I would say shitty adaptations of good books because it feels more like they're disrespecting the source material that way. A good example is, think of how you felt when you saw how bad Dragon Ball Evolution was. A blatant disrespect in just about every way you could have one of an otherwise groundbreaking series. Good adaptations are otherwise a pleasant surprise for me. Case in point, the Maze Runner series. Would you rather depower Zeus and strike him with lightning, or give Ares an empty pickle jar for Christmas? If you mean permanently depower Zeus, yeah, I'll depower him and then I'll have fun striking him with lightning. I'll strike him with so much lightning that I'll have to stand in as a human-shaped bug zapper. What is your favorite video game? My absolute favorite is Final Fantasy IX because it struck me in those formative years and helped shape who I ended up becoming. My second favorite is Alan Wake because it's not only a fun game with great characters and a great storyline, the main character is a writer. How can I say no to that? Also, it's extremely clever, and it came from my favorite game studio, Remedy Studios. They are awesome. Does ink flow through your veins? I'm a writer. My blood is just ink and caffeine. My question is, after you're done with the book you're currently working on, will you ever continue with your Microgod series? I don't know if I will. I actually had 7 or 8 books plotted out, like loosely plotted out, to try to continue into this small series. The problem was a lot of them all wound up kind of flowing the same way, so a lot of them really felt formulaic. For example, the sequel is about 90-95% of the way done. I just need to go and touch a few things up in the end. But I don't know if I'll ever actually release it because it's almost functionally the same story as the first one, and I'm not crazy about it. I don't know, I might release it for free somewhere if I ever get like a website up, but we'll have to see. How old is Ash? How long have you had Ash? And do you plan on making YouTube a full-time job? Ash is going to be 3 years old this October. I've had him ever since he was 12 weeks old, and I will likely never make YouTube a full-time job. Unfortunately, the website and the powers that be have demonstrated themselves irresponsible enough that I can never rely upon them for a steady paycheck. My question is, where is your show's plotline heading? Is there a definitive end to it? I actually have a rough outline for 4 seasons of the storyline, including the 2 you've seen, as well as a possible movie. I'm not sure if we're ever going to get to that, unfortunately, because there wasn't really a lot of demand for the storyline, so we might be cutting that for now. If we ever do continue it, I will likely continue it in a novel sometime in the future. And that actually might give me an advantage because now I'm not going to be limited to what I can do in my spare time with film. Now I can actually do anything I need, and I'll have a lot more options as far as what I can show you guys. Plus, I can expand on a lot of things that you've already seen. It just comes down to someday, eventually, getting the time to do it. I asked you if you were going to branch out and review storylines for video games or books based on video games. Are you still considering this? Have you made a decision? Also, what are your thoughts on famous lyricist and rapper Logic writing a novel? If I can find the right video game that maybe not a lot of other people are talking about, then yeah, I'll consider writing something or reviewing the storyline. It's just going to be a matter of finding time to actually play the video game and seeing if I can actually write something coherent for a review. Also, I don't know who Logic is, but hey, good luck to him. If you have merch, where can we get it? Thank you for the shameless plug. We do have a merch store over on Redbubble. It doesn't have a wide selection right now, but we are working on expanding it. We've got a few more designs in the works right now. Not sure when we'll get everything together for it, but honestly, I think this next batch of designs looks much better. When's the Q&A coming out? You're watching it now, so there you go. What age did you start to read as a hobby, and what was the first book that you read? As I mentioned before, my first book ever was The Big Red Barn. I've kind of always been a big reader, but I didn't really become a voracious reader until the last, I'd say, decade or so. To the point where I'm kind of solidly known as the book guy at work. What can I say? I get bored easily. What styles of fencing have you done? I didn't really study fencing that much. I was much more into broadswords and katanas myself. The type of studying I did do, as brief as it was foil fencing. I was okay, I guess. But if someone came along who actually knew what they were doing, they were likely going to beat me. What is your top 3 worst books or movies that you've ever reviewed so far? Well, there are 2 ways to take that as far as I can see. The first would be worst movies overall. Because if you're going with 3 worst books, 3 Onision books. Easily. If you don't like that, Twilight, New Moon, and 50 Shades of Grey. I'm sorry, it's the easy go-to answer. And if you don't like that answer, then Inkheart, The Fifth Wave, and The New Order by Chris Weitz. As far as movies, though, again, outside of the obvious Twilight and 50 Shades, I would say Full Metal Alchemist, Dragon Ball Evolution, and Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters. But if you meant that as worst adaptations, I would probably go with Dragon Ball Evolution, Endless Love, and Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters. I will have a much more complete list of worst adaptations later on, so stay tuned for that. Okay, and that looks like it's it. So, a big thank you to everyone who submitted a question. I am sorry if I didn't get to yours specifically. If I didn't, it's probably because I didn't have a very interesting answer. Also, for those of you who kept asking or recommending books or movies for me, you can recommend whatever you want. I have seen them, I've written them down. I may get to them, I will have to see. It really depends on a number of factors. But hopefully this was enjoyable. And hopefully you learned a little bit more about me. Thanks again to the, well, now 65,000 subscribers. Hopefully we can get another 65,000. Because it would be great if I could do this as a full-time job. We just need to do something about YouTube's constant demonetization problems. And to think my high school drama teacher said I would never amount to anything. I now have a larger fan base than all of his plays put together. Suck it, Doug. Anyway, inspirational quote, here's a kitty, wave goodbye Ash, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye!